My first Lone Peak, and to be honest, I am pretty surprised with this low profile shoe. As I said, I have never ran and Lone Peaks. I had never actually owned one, and initially I thought that I'm gonna only use this particular model for short runs. I'm ending up reaching for this shoe much more than the Altra Olympus 6. I'm gonna start by talking about the specifications for this shoe. Upper is a ripstop mesh upper. It is a very comfortable upper. It has overlays which are not sewed. I assume that they are glued to the upper. It has a nice protective toe bumper and a nicely padded gusseted tongue, the kind of gusset which actually attaches to the upper. It's attached to both sides. This is the kind of gusset which I really enjoy in trail shoes because most of the debris will stay on the gusset rather than ending up inside the shoe. There's a nice padded tongue, a nice pull tab on the tongue, nice pull tab on the heel, has gaiter traps. It features the original fit from Altra. It has a generous broad toe box, and again in the midfoot it feels slightly, I think, maybe wider compared to the Altra Olympus 6. The midsole, it's a 25mm Ultra Ego midsole. When we talk about the 25mm, keep in mind that around 4mm is the whole outsole, including the lugs and the base of the outsole, and another 4mm is the insole. So in reality it is 8mm less than 25mm. It's not full 25mm of Ultra Ego foam. It has a 0mm drop. That means that the stack height at the heel and stack height at the forefoot is the same. According to Altra, the midsole should be lighter compared to previous midsoles, something which I cannot comment because I've never actually owned an Altra Lone Peak. The foam is relatively firm and therefore to a certain extent it feels responsive. It does not have an aggressive rocker. The outsole, it features Vibram's Mega Grip. It has 3.5mm lugs with a 2mm base, and it has no exposed midsole, which I'm gonna speak about its advantages later on in this video. The weight for my pair, which is 44.5 EU, weighs at 340 grams, and in Europe it retails around €150. However, honestly, in most occasions you can find it much cheaper. I think I bought mine around €120. However, if you are lucky with sizing, you can find it as cheap as €110. This is my lowest stack height trail running shoes to date. In the beginning, as I said, I was concerned. I thought that my feet are gonna get destroyed if I run longer hours on the trails. Especially here locally, we have mostly rocky trails, so there's no soft ground, etc. So I'm all the time stomping on rocks, pointed rocks, etc. So far, running over 60 kilometers in this shoe, with the longest run being around 5 hours, I'm really enjoying this shoe. After doing these initial kilometers, I can say these things about the shoe, the things that I like. I like the spacious toe box. It is a very wide, broad toe box. I mean, it's an original fit, so it's typical Altra. But myself, when I'm running, I use the stable toe by Correct Toes. It's like a piece of actually silicone which keeps my big toe as wide as possible to make use of it during the running, and I have no issue to fit my forefoot inside this toe box, and there is plenty of space for my toes to splay and wiggle, which usually reduce, in my case, blisters when I'm running long hours. The upper is comfortable, might not be as breathable as the Olympus 6 because it has this kind of ripstop upper. However, no debris comes in, so you hate one thing and you love the other thing, especially here in the dry months of summer. Most of the trail is loose gravel or loose clay, so losing a bit of breathability might be an advantage. You end up with much less debris inside the shoe by the end of the run. There's enough padding in the tongue, so when in my case, if you see, I tighten the upper a lot because I have very low volume feet, so I need to make it very tight. They do not dig into the upper of my feet thanks to this padded tongue. The midsole is firm, but as I said, having rocky trails and the firm midsole, usually they complement each other because at least I am not feeling all the rocks. The outsole is great. I think this is one of the best outsoles that I've tried from Vibram, to be honest. I wish to a certain extent that this outsole was on something like the Altra Mont Blanc Speed, because I think it's much more aggressive, even though the lug depth is the same. However, I think this one digs and claws in much more into loose gravel compared to the mega grip that there is on the Altra Mont Blanc Carbon, for example, and the Altra Mont Blanc Speed. So I would choose this outsole for some added weight over that outsole any day, especially when I'm running on loose gravel. I did try it on some wet limestone next to the coastline. It was a wavy day, and I said, let me just try it for the sake of trying, because most likely we won't see rain for the next 4 months. And it did a perfect job. I remember once I was running on the same spot with the Tim 5, and I was slipping with this one. It really felt like I am sticking to the limestone, so kudos to this outsole. I appreciate as well that there are no exposed midsole. That means that it becomes a little bit stiffer. However, it's more protective because the outsole is kind of acting like a rock plate itself. Even with the Olympus 6, when I step on a stone on the exposed midsole, even though it's a higher stack shoe, I tend to feel that rock or stone penetrating through that midsole. I'm a heavy runner, 84 kilos, so usually when I'm landing on my feet, I'm really compressing the midsole. So that's another advantage of having more protection on the outsole. For me, the lockdown is not perfect. However, it's not something I think related only to the shoe. Whatever shoe I run in, especially the Ultra models, top was even worse because they have much more volume. I tend to have problems with actually slipping around. Usually I mitigate by changing the insole. I tend to use the one from Innovate, the Boomerang, and I'm not sure if it is visible, I tend to put non-slip tape, the one that they use on stairs, not to slip down the stairs, stick it to the insole so my feet move less around, especially when I'm running steep descents. It's a common problem for me in all shoes. I have been trying to find ways to mitigate this. So far it's not completely successful. The midsole foam is nothing special. It's again a very basic EVA midsole. To be honest, if you've never run in the Altra Mont Blanc Carbon or the Altra Mont Blanc Speed, you might notice the difference compared to other models. However, if you use the Altra Mont Blanc Speed or Carbon, then you immediately realize that this midsole is to an extent boring. That one, it feels more responsive, slightly softer than this one. So it is, I believe, much more enjoyable. Maybe it's time for Altra to up a bit the game in the midsoles. As a conclusion, as I said initially, I thought that I'm going to use it for short runs. However, I am reaching for it much more. I'm enjoying that ground contact and that I'm kind of, how to say, it feels lighter on the feet compared to the Olympus 6. Although weight-wise, I think they are very similar. But the thing that I'm enjoying the most is, as I said, is ground contact. I feel that I'm more connected to the trails compared to some other models from Altra. And for my easy runs, it's doing a very good job. I feel protected in it. The grip is excellent. So on the trails, that adds to the experience. When it comes to durability, I cannot speak now because it's too early. Most likely I will do a long-term review when I reach around 500 to 600 kilometers. That would be later during this year. That is it so far. If you have any questions, feel free to write them down in the comments below. I'll do my best to answer all your queries as soon as possible. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next one.